Good morning, everyone. So I would like to begin by thanking Rector Avdi Spahic, his vice rectors, and all of our honored guests this morning for being here, and especially thanking all of the students for taking time out from your classes and your busy lives to be here. I appreciate that very much. It's an honor for me to be speaking in such a historic institution, but I hope that today we can look to the future. I'll talk for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then I very much hope that we can have an exchange of questions and answers at the end, because I would love to hear your thoughts. In fact, the most valuable part of my first few months here in Bosnia and Herzegovina has been the opportunity to get out around the country and talk with people. And today is my first chance to talk with university students, such as yourselves. Monday will, in fact, be my 3-month anniversary here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I have been fortunate enough in these few months to meet with people from all walks of life, from government and industry, to NGO leaders fighting for gender equality and social services, to budding entrepreneurs, farmers, and senior citizens just hoping to collect their pension checks. I've traveled to Doboj and Maglaj, most are in Trebinje, and to Srebrenica. One of the questions that I have frequently posed in my quest to gain insights about Bosnia and Herzegovina is, who are the next generation of leaders of this country? Where are they? Interesting, many adults in the establishment tell me they don't know, but every time I've met with young people, they tell me that they are those leaders, that they are preparing to make their country better, which I find quite inspiring. I hope that many of you here today also plan to be among those leaders of this beautiful country, and I look forward to hearing from you about that at the end of my chat. Honesty is crucial between true friends, and the United States over the last 20 years has demonstrated that it's a true friend of Bosnia and Herzegovina. In these 2 decades since the signing of the Dayton Peace Accords, we have invested over $1.7 billion in this country. Nearly 30,000 U.S. service members have supported I-4 and S-4 to help guarantee the peace and stability that Bosnia and Herzegovina needed to recover from war. And in addition to these historic ties, there are now 350,000 Bosnian Americans living in the United States. So I expect these ties not just to deepen, but to endure. I'm a relative newcomer to the political scene here, so I have tried to do the smart thing and not talk all the time, but instead listen to people. Maybe to the chagrin of my colleagues in the press in the back of the room, I have not been doing interviews or press conferences. But in fact, what I have been doing is hearing the perspective of people from across Bosnia and Herzegovina. After gathering input from citizens across the country, I pulled together a broad cross-section of my staff at the embassy, both Americans and our Bosnian colleagues, and we took a day away from our desks to do a big brainstorming session. Lots of coffee and lots of heated debate, I assure you. I asked them to think outside the box, outside traditional norms and constraints, and I would challenge you today to do the same. We had a completely frank and honest discussion of what some of the biggest problems are facing this country, how we as the American Embassy have addressed those over the last years, and most importantly, how to focus our efforts in the future. Our goal, to help support the true progress that you and this country need. Based on all those discussions, I believe that the following 5 areas are the most important for us to think about. First, and perhaps foremost, you won't be surprised to hear that we discuss the need for political reform. And yes, we did talk about constitutional reform. At the end of the day, I think such reforms are inevitable as part of the European Union accession process. The United States firmly believes that Bosnia and Herzegovina's future lies with the EU and NATO. And all new EU candidates have had to make constitutional changes. Before it became a member of the EU, Croatia amended 12 chapters of its constitution to harmonize legislation with EU standards, and neighboring candidate states, including Bosnia and Herzegovina, will have to do the same. Here in BIH, of course, the situation is even more complicated because the constitutional framework was part of an overall agreement created to end a war. The Dayton Agreement continues to serve its purpose, and we should all recognize and honor that. That war ended 20 years ago, however, and today, Bosnia and Herzegovina needs to look to the future. I want to be clear that the existing framework does allow for a fully functioning state if there is political will. And I wish to reiterate that the U.S. has always respected Bosnia and Herzegovina as a sovereign state composed of two entities, the Federation and the Republika Srpska, within internationally recognized borders. That said, fundamental political reforms, even within the current construct, are critically important, not merely as benchmarks for becoming part of the European Union, but for the tangible difference that they would make in the lives of people right now. Over the past 10 years, there have been several initiatives aimed at constitutional reforms, large and small, from the April package to the Prude Agreement to the Butmir process. And of course, the negotiations on Sejdić-Finci. All of these have so far failed. But if the leaders and citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina, whether they live in Banja Luka or Mostar, Sarajevo or Brčko, want a better future for their communities and their children, they must re-engage on this important topic. Citizens need to fully accept that the reform process is not the responsibility only of diplomats and politicians. Citizens themselves need to speak up, tell your elected representatives what you want, and hold them accountable for delivering results. Closely tied to the need for political reform, the next issue we wrestled with was how the United States can contribute substantively to economic reforms. BIH needs these to finally create jobs and improve lives. I've had a number of discussions with members of the American Chamber of Commerce on these issues, and the current EU initiative will clearly call for a number of significant economic reforms, many in areas near and dear to citizens. Things like addressing public salaries and benefits, clarifying procedures and regulations to ensure leaders are doing the work they're being paid to do, and identifying areas of waste and abuse so taxpayers get what you're paying for. The Compact for Growth, issued by the EU last year, lays all of these out. Public administration reform has the potential to substantially improve the effectiveness of services, reduce costs to citizens, and unburden the private sector that should drive the economy. These are all functions that can work under the current Dayton structure, if there is political will. Those of you nearing graduation probably have thoughts on the desperate need for a more flexible job market to encourage businesses to expand hiring. Outdated labor laws and collective bargaining agreements are difficult for any country to change. They're protected by powerful forces. But the only way to create new jobs is to modernize these agreements. Likewise, for Bosnia and Herzegovina to become competitive and for the skills of its talented young people and entrepreneurs to generate employment opportunities and serve the greater good, intellectual property rights have to be protected, and commercial laws and regulations across the country, the whole country, must be harmonized. We also need a substantive discussion about the future of state-owned companies, where similar reforms have to target the influence and patronage system that political parties use to select executives, boards of directors, and employees, often at the expense of managerial skill or technical competence. This dooms these same state-owned companies to waste and mismanagement. But there are several that are profitable and would be even more so if they could eliminate political interference. My question for you is how to make this happen. Part of the answer certainly lies with transparency, and as in politics, citizen demands for accountability for the transactions of such companies. Which leads us to corruption. I have been living in the U.S. state of Virginia for the last several years. The week before I came here to Sarajevo, the governor of Virginia was convicted and sentenced for corruption, the first time in the history of the state of Virginia that a governor was indicted and convicted of a felony. What I've heard from people of this country is that they are waiting to see when the first untouchable figure here in Bosnia will be held accountable by this country's judicial system, either for selling jobs, stealing taxpayer funds, or whatever the issue may be. Everyone knows this climate of impunity, the lack of punishment for these people, has to end for Bosnia and Herzegovina to move forward. Anecdotal tales of corruption are quite horrifying. Our embassy has a multi-level and multifaceted approach to tackling these issues, working with key elements in the justice sector here at all levels, from police to judges to prosecutors, to help build cases related to corruption and organized crime. We have partnered for a number of years with prosecutors' offices across the country to help make improvements, to help them operate more effectively, and support the development. We are supporting the development of a new special anti-corruption office in the Bosnia and Herzegovina Federal Prosecutor's Office. Other programs we support work with courts to streamline procedures, reduce case backlogs, and build the capacity of courts to enforce judgments. But far more needs to be done, and we look forward to working with the new government as they seek to identify new ways to address this pressing problem. In addition to working with the government, we also work with non-governmental and civil society groups to advocate and demand transparency. We foster their efforts to expand laws related to corruption, such as protections for whistleblowers, conflict of interest, and electoral financing. As important as these three issues are for the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina, I think one topic may be even more important. For this country to capitalize on its vast wealth of human capital, which means you, the students who are here and those who will follow in your footsteps, I want to talk about the critical topic of education reform. The rectors and I discussed this during our meeting beforehand, and they are also very focused on the need for education here in Bosnia and Herzegovina to truly prepare you for the future. Bosnia simply has no greater resource right now than the collective creativity, innovation, and aspirations of its young people. I have been told by businesses, educators, and parents alike that the system in place to educate you is often not keeping up with the times. They feel it keeps you from achieving your full potential at a time when the country desperately needs all you can offer in order to resurrect itself and become competitive in the global marketplace. Unlike much of the rest of the world, you have an advantage because a strong education infrastructure does already exist here. It's a matter of exerting the political will to modernize methods, provide resources, incorporate new technologies, and ensure that every student at every level of education has access to a quality education founded on the principles of diversity, reconciliation, and universal human rights, no matter who you are and no matter where you live. I've outlined 4 key priorities for the U.S. Embassy going forward. These are common challenges for everyone in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and they call for common solutions. Which brings me to the 5th and final point that I would like to make. Bosnia and Herzegovina has a very complex history. We recognize the structures created under Dayton, but that does not mean that the citizens of this wonderful country cannot foster a shared vision for the future and a common sense of pride in it. We all saw this last year during the disastrous floods, when citizens in hard-hit areas came together as neighbors to meet the crisis. In the hour of need, rafting clubs, students, farmers, and small business owners all pitched in and helped each other with no regard to ethnic background. We witnessed similar cooperation and heroics by members of the Bosnia and Herzegovina armed forces as they rescued victims from the floods. In daily life, too, be it citizens rallying behind a football team as it heads off to the World Cup, or supporting efforts to see the National Museum reopen so that all can again appreciate the diverse cultural heritage of this country while sharing it with visitors from around the world. The people of Bosnia and Herzegovina will achieve much more by working together in the spirit of the common good than by fighting against each other. You have so much to be proud of here in Bosnia and Herzegovina: a very rich history, abundant resources, stunning natural beauty, and the opportunity for a bright and prosperous future in the European Union. My staff and I at the U.S. Embassy are constantly looking for ways to support you to that end. When I arrived in January, I launched a challenge to celebrate this 20th year of peace. Izaberi zadatak, budi promijena. Choose the cause, be the solution. Our goal is to inspire 20,000 volunteers around the country to step up and find ways to make their schools, their communities, or their neighborhoods better. I want to challenge each and every one of you to do the same, to join the challenge and find a way that you can contribute to making some part of your country better. On April 22nd, I will lead the U.S. Embassy, joined by the American Chamber of Commerce and some of our colleagues at NATO headquarters, out to Doughboy, Maglai, and Doughboy Yug for an Earth Day cleanup. This is the 45th anniversary of Earth Day this year, a day that was started in the United States and that we feel is very important for the future of our planet. When I traveled out to that region of Bosnia and Herzegovina in February, I was amazed by the litter left behind by the floods. And we want to do our part to help restore the beautiful natural beauty of that area before the summer tourist season. We are working with the mayors and citizens from across the communities. So in closing today, I hope that you will also choose your cause, whether it's cleaning up your community, starting a new business, entering politics, becoming an educator. Bosnia and Herzegovina needs all of your talents to develop the truly significant opportunities here. Thank you so much for your attention, and now I hope you won't be shy and that you really will ask some questions or share some of your thoughts. Thank you so much.